Hello and welcome to another episode of the Agency Leadership Podcast. I'm Chip Griffin.
And I'm Gini Dietrich.
And Ginny, I think with all this AI thing, we need to change how we're doing this whole podcast. Just throw it out and start over.
Great. Let's do it.
Right after this. Now that I think about it, maybe that's a little bit of an overreaction to AI. Maybe I should take it in and figure out how to use AI as opposed to just discarding our entire podcast and starting over.
Or maybe we just let AI do it and we take the credit.
Well, that's a good idea. I would love to see how AI would like.
We actually should do an episode on that just to see. Put in prompts.
See if we can get ChatGPT to mimic an episode of the Agency.
I love it.
Podcast.
I think that's a funny idea.
And then we'll read our lines.
Right.
That it comes up with. That would be, I don't know.
Something. That'd be something.
That would be something. It would be something if it could even figure it out.
Yeah, that's true. We should do a test like that at some point. Not for a whole episode. Just
we have to be careful, though. We don't want this podcast to turn into actual work for us, though.
That's a really good point.
This is supposed to be, we kibitz for a while, then we hit record, and we just say whatever's on our mind. We hit stop, and then we turn it over to Jen, and she does all the hard work. While
she does do
we just got to have a little bit of a.
And the best is that she includes. I love that she does this. She includes like clips and stuff to other things that we've talked about, or she'll include a meme. Or a couple of weeks ago, she included the link to the YouTube clip on or short on. Tom using people as his footstool. I was like, this is great. She's great at it.
She enjoys that part of it. I suspect there's parts that she doesn't enjoy, but I think she enjoys our references because it gives her an excuse to go and Google funny clips on the internet and call it work. So.
And then she emails me with funny, snarky remarks, which I also love. So.
Yes, I suspect
I'm a
many
big
of them are at my
fan.
expense. So
not always.
Anywho, so what we're actually going to talk about today is AI and what it means for agencies and their business models, because this is something that came up recently in, of course, the Spin Sucks community.
Yep. So our friend Chris Penn recently wrote an article on value-based pricing and artificial intelligence, and it was shared in the community. And there was a lively discussion about it, including from our friend Chip Griffin, who talked about, whether or not this is applicable to agencies, whether or not we can use AI and how it works for value-based pricing. And if AI is making us more efficient, should we be charging more? Because clients are getting the value of our expertise on top of the AI. Is that a nice way of putting it?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, needless to say, I found this post to be rather triggering because it had two of my current triggers, AI and value-based pricing.
Just in the right.
Just right there. And
it was like red alerts. Boop, 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 boop.
So if Chris was trying to trigger me, he couldn't have found a better way to do it. And I know he wasn't looking to do that because I'm fairly certain that I'm not on Chris's mind every day when he wakes up and says, how can I?
Well, now he knows. Now he knows.
Now he knows if he would like to trigger me, just talk about value-based pricing and or AI or put them both together, and my head will explode. And look, I will use the same disclaimer that I used in the community, some version of, I think Chris is a smart guy. I love a lot of the stuff that he puts out. I used to sit there and watch him at a Saturday night data party on Facebook, so clearly I am a Chris Penn fan. That said, I am not a fan of this post at all. I think that it is certainly premature at best for an agency to say, I'm going to rethink my whole business model because of what AI is doing. And to think that the solution is to try to find ways to charge more for the things that AI allows you to do easier. I fail to understand that rationale. That feels much more like the way old school people look at how do they protect themselves when technology comes along, right? And my point is that AI is just the latest in a series of technology. It's cool, it's great, but it's not it's not something we haven't seen before, right? There's so many innovations that have made work more efficient, things get done faster and all of that. And we've all figured out how to adapt to them. And it's not simply by trying to figure out how do I protect my margins against a threat.
So
Take
I
a
would
deep
say,
breath now.
yeah, I would say a couple of things. One of the first things that he talks about in the article, and we'll link to it in the show notes, is that AI has created the death of the hourly business. And I don't think that that's true, because the death of the hourly business has been here for a while. I can't tell you that that's actually not true. I was going to say, I can't tell you last time we billed by the hour. We bill by the hour for crisis work, but nothing else. Everything else is project based or retainer based. And I think that you and I have been talking about this for how many episodes? 205 episodes now. There is the death of the hourly business has been here and come and gone. And even when Phyllis shared the article in the SpinSucks community, she said, we price per project, as I'm sure many of you do as well. So she preempted that by saying, like, we don't bill by the hour. So what is it about the value-based pricing in here that's beyond the hourly business? Because I think that piece of it is dead, has been dead. Nobody, I don't even think attorneys are doing that. Well, my attorney doesn't bill by the hour anymore. It's dead.
I disagree with that. We've talked about that before. I think that there's a time and place for hourly billing. Obviously, you still do it with crisis work, as you said.
Yep.
And so I think that you should always look at your various options for pricing and figure out what works best for you as well as for your prospects and clients.
Right.
And in some cases, that may be hourly billing. So I don't subscribe to you should default to no hourly billing. Right. I think that in many cases it adds complexity and tension that's unnecessary. And when you have a pretty good sense of how much time something is going to take, I would prefer a fixed fee approach. But I mean, my attorney still does charge by the hour.
Do they?
Absolutely. I've used plumbers recently for some of that. They charge by the hour still, right? There are still when you don't know how long something is going to take, it is the most fair pricing solution for both parties to do hourly billing. Because if neither side really knows how long it's going to take and you do fixed fee, then someone is likely going to get it stuck to them in the end, right? Because either you have to overcharge to protect yourself against the fact that it might take more time. And then if it takes less, now you're overcharging the recipient, right? So but if you have a reasonable idea of how long it's going to take within a reasonable margin of error, by all means use fixed fee. But to me, the whole argument about hourly just doesn't make sense. And people always, somehow lawyers always come into the hourly billing conversation. And so, and one of the specific examples that Chris used in the post is how he had put together some legal agreement with ChatGPT for a friend, and a lawyer reviewed it and said, yep, it's good to go with no edits. And so this is how we must know that hourly billing is dead and it's going to doom lawyers that ChatGPT exists. Except that there have always been things that have made it faster and easier for lawyers to do things. My father was a lawyer. I remember going to his office in the late 70s, early 80s, and they sat there and he had a secretarial pool that would type things up that he would record into a dictaphone. You'll probably need to look that up, but it used to be that you had a handheld telephone that the attorneys would speak their letters and contracts into, and then someone else would listen to the tape back and they would type it on a manual typewriter that would then, have to be edited on paper and then retyped, all of this kind of, right? So we had that. He had a huge library in the basement of his building with all of these case books and law books, and that's where they went to get information. Now, attorneys type their own letters and contracts. They don't have a secretary who does it for them. They type into their computer in LexisNexis and they get the citations that they need immediately, just like that. They don't have to go hunting for it. So the level of efficiency is many orders of magnitude greater than it was in the 70s and 80s. And yet the hourly billing model is still very much alive and well. And I don't know about the attorneys in your life, but most of them do pretty well. And they're billing by the hour in most cases still. Some, as you note, have stopped doing that, but I would say by and large, the attorneys that I come into contact with still use it. So the hourly billing model is not dead, and AI is not going to destroy it, because if ChatGPT is the only thing that you're doing, you're just generating contracts, well, then you didn't need a lawyer in the first place. Go download a template from somewhere. You can do that already.
This contradicts what you said last week, which was never use something that hasn't been reviewed by an attorney. Yeah. So if you're going to download,
but if you're going to download the GPT to do it, you might as well just download the template, right? I mean, at least the template probably was reviewed at some point in time by some lawyer somewhere. ChatGPT was never reviewed by a lawyer anywhere, right? So if you give me a choice between the two, I'm probably going to pick the template that some lawyer likely reviewed, particularly with, my knowledge of ChatGPT hallucinating things or that kind of stuff, or the fact that ChatGPT is out of date. And so if there are laws or regulations that have come along in the interim that mean your contract or agreement should be different, well, ChatGPT can't, by definition, know about that.
Right.
And good lawyers ask you a lot of questions to figure out what you really need and to help you understand what the risks are, because there's not a one-size-fits-all contract or agreement for anyone. Right? You can cover everything, but if you do that, you'll probably never get the other party to sign.
Right.
So a good lawyer sits with you and says, okay, let's talk about the work you're doing. Let's talk about what you're worried about from a risk standpoint. How much exposure are you willing to accept? And that's how you figure out what to include or exclude for your personal circumstances. ChatGPT cannot do that in 2023.
I think you bring up a really great point too, which is the same for agency owners, which is we have an expertise and we have experience. And those two things, along with the trust that we've built and the authority that we've built, those things are what somebody is hiring us for, right? They're hiring us because we have expertise and experience that they either don't have internally or that they need extra brains around because there's something coming up. And that's why they hire agencies. They don't hire agencies because they have a team internally who can do it and, they're just going to use ChatGPT and can we just review it? That's not how it works. So yes, we can use ChatGPT to make us more efficient. And when we were talking before the show started, I relayed one of the things that we use it for pretty consistently, which is we have a client who does an hour-long webinar every week. And before ChatGPT came into our lives, probably last November, we would have it transcribed by Remy or Tev, and then we would, or I just did that different, Rev or Temi. My dyslexic brain.
I was trying to figure out where you were going with. I was trying to process that in my head, and I thought it was actually someone's name, like Remy somebody, and
Temi or Rev, and then back before November, we would have to go through and clean it all up, and then we'd have to create content from it. Now what we do is we throw that transcript into ChatGPT, we have it clean it up, and then we say create 3 outlines for 3 blog posts on this topic. So then it gives us a starting point and an outline for us to create the content, and it probably saves 20 hours a week easily. We're not charging more for that. We're not charging less for that. What we're doing is we're saying, here's all of this, and they're ecstatic because they're getting it so much faster. They're getting it within a day instead of almost the following week. They're getting it really fast. So they're ecstatic. And then we're taking that time and we're putting it into other things that we know need to be done for this client. So they're like thinking they won the lottery because they're paying the same exact amount, but they feel like they're getting more. They're getting something delivered a lot faster, several days faster than when we were doing it manually. And we're doing other projects that have been on the back burner for several months because we've been spending all this time doing all this content that now ChatGPT helps us do. So my point is that you can use it to be efficient, but you don't have to charge more or less because you're using it. And you don't have to say, oh my gosh, it's going to replace us because it's making you more efficient. It's giving you an opportunity to be able to do more for your clients.
Right. And we're constantly getting access to those kinds of things in the agency world. I mean, looking at all of the things that we do today as a PR or marketing agency in 2023, almost all of them are easier to do today than they were 20 or 30 years ago.
Absolutely. I mean, your example.
I can't remember the last time I stood at a copy machine.
Correct.
Or a fax machine. right?
Correct. Or
I mean,
send packages back and forth to clients to get approval.
right. I mean, I
Yes.
load paper into my printer about once every 6 months now, right? These are all things that took a lot of time before.
Yes.
And all of the technological advances have helped improve what we do, right? I mean, the mobile phones that we all carry with us have given us the ability to do things at times and places that we never could have before. Those are all good things if we figure out how to use them right. AI
Yes.
is the same way.
That's right.
AI is not a nuclear bomb that's going to come in and
No.
destroy everything. And so when I hear people talk about, because of AI, we need to completely redo everything. No, we need to figure out how to integrate it in what we're doing. And I love that you
Yes.
talked about how you can use it to make yourself more efficient and produce better, more timely results for clients. That is very different than the example of using AI to replace a lawyer or an agency or
Right.
something like that. And if someone is going to use ChatGPT to replace the work that the agency is going to do, well, that's not a playing field I want to be on anyway. Right? I want them to understand why I can provide them something that is above and beyond what the AI can do. And to your point, we as experts have knowledge. We have things that go beyond what the technology can presently do. And we can look out there and say, okay, here's what's going on in the world today. And so maybe you don't want to say it this way, you want to say it that way. Or maybe you want to go with this particular approach because we've seen it working of late. If you're relying on ChatGPT, it knows what worked a year and a half ago.
Right. Right.
That's not the
Right.
same thing as an agency that's staying on top of things. And it's also not human. So it can't read people's perceptions, at least again in 2023, in the same way that we as experts can. And so if someone wants to just use it and have it, write press releases and put together target lists and have it do it all on its own, God bless them. Go do that. Those aren't the clients that I'm trying to fight for.
No, and I think that the agencies wanting to do that as well are not the agencies that should be hired, because clients are hiring you for your experience and your expertise. And if you're not going to add that on top of the artificial intelligence that you're using to make yourself more efficient, then you're not providing the best result that you can for your clients. So yes, absolutely use it to make yourself more efficient. And yes, absolutely use it to create better, faster results. But you have to provide that expertise on top of it, or there's no reason for you to be in business at all.
Right. And if you're able to use it to make you more efficient, some of that can go to your bottom line in the form of profits. Some of that can go to increasing the bandwidth you have to do more for the client for the
That's
same
right.
fee.
That's
I
right.
mean, if you can shave off, 10 hours a month because you're using ChatGPT to do summaries and edits and that kind of stuff. I mean, certainly take some of that to your bottom line, but take some of those hours and do something more to produce some more results. They're still within scope. I'm not encouraging scope creep
Right.
here,
Yep.
but
Yep.
there's
Yep.
a lot of things even within scope that
Yep.
a lot of times we say, well, we just don't have time to get to that this month.
Yep.
Have time to get to that.
Yep.
Deepen your relationship with that client. Make them stickier. Find a way to upsell them on something else. You'll come out ahead in the end if you're using it intelligently and not seeing it as a threat that causes you to have to redo and rethink everything. And if you're going to redo and rethink everything, please don't play with value pricing. It is one of the most dangerous things for people to do who don't even get basic pricing correct. And I've talked about this
That's a
before.
great
And
point.
even if you listen to Blair Enns, who is probably the biggest proponent of value pricing, with his Win Without Pitching and the groups that he has and all that, he is a huge proponent. But he will tell you quite clearly that this is not pricing 101. You don't start at value pricing. Value pricing is a graduate level activity. And so until you get to the point where you just can knock it out of the park with hourly or fixed rate billing, and you can do it consistently, reliably, profitably, in a way that your prospects are believing that they're getting great results from you when they become clients. If you're not able to do that, value pricing is not the answer, because value pricing is very difficult. It's very complicated. It requires you to have a real specialization in the work that you do and the industries you serve so that you understand what that true value is and have the confidence that you truly can deliver that value in the same way that the client sees that value. Those are not easy things to do. It sounds great on paper. It feels good when you watch it in a 30-second YouTube short. That is not the same as actually implementing it in your agency in real life.
And I will tell you that there are situations that we do value pricing, but it's things like speaking engagements, where the client, and there have been times where a prospect has said, I don't understand why this costs so much money. You're only going to be on stage for an hour. Yes, you're right. I'm only going to be on stage for an hour, but I have 20 years behind me of experience that I've built to this level that allows me to be able to get on stage for an hour. And I'm going to be away from the business and, like all of the other stuff that goes around it. So you have to be able to prove that the reason you're asking for that price is because of all the stuff that you have around it. Not just because you're spending only an hour on something, but because you actually have the expertise to be able to provide value-based pricing. And it's hard. Like people will say, well, I just don't understand why it costs this much money when you're only going to be on stage for an hour. You're like, okay, well, then you're not the right client for me. But
see, even that, I would argue, is not truly value-based pricing, right? That is premium pricing. And I think this is one of the areas where people get confused in the difference between premium pricing, right? I mean, a lawyer who charges you $1,000 an hour is engaging really in premium pricing. Value pricing, to use your speaking engagement example, would be you understanding what is the value to the event organizer for having you on the stage. What percentage of ticket sales can they attribute to the fact that you're listed as a keynote? What percentage of the satisfaction of attendees derives from the fact that they loved the keynote that you gave, right? Because that's where you get to what the value is of your speech. The fact that you've got a lot of experience leading into it justifies the value, but it is not the true essence of value-based pricing, which says, okay, I'm going to produce this press release for you. It's going to generate, in my view, an additional $1 million in sales, and I want a piece of that action, right? Maybe not explicitly, but because I know it's going to generate $1 million in revenue, it's reasonable for me to ask for $100,000 for that one press release, right? Because it's only 10%. And so that's not that bad. That's value pricing. And the problem is that most people conflate premium pricing
That's fair.
with value pricing. And for you to understand how much of, what your true value is, that event organizer, that would be incredibly difficult because you'd have to spend a lot of time understanding their business model.
Yep.
And understanding, what's the difference if someone else is up there speaking instead.
And getting the data from them that they're probably not going to give me.
Correct. And so most of the examples, if you read articles or you watch videos about this, most of the people who propose value pricing say you should say to them, okay, Ms. Event Organizer, how much tickets or how many tickets are you going to sell at how much? And, how many keynote speakers do you have? And how prominent am I going to be in that? And so, okay, so, if I didn't come, how do you think that would affect your revenue? First of all, most people aren't going to answer any of those questions for you.
That's right.
Even if they could, and a lot of them can't answer those questions, even at your clients, even if it's not an event, right? I mean, they just don't have that access to information. And so if you're truly going to go down this path, it's a whole different world. And so I think we need to be really careful about that. We certainly need to make sure that we're not undercutting ourselves. We don't want to get into the business of trying to compete with AI. And so saying, well, ChatGPT can do it, so I'm only going to charge you $10 for this press release because I know you could get it for free anyway. That's not the way to do it. I'm not proposing that.
No.
But also, don't go out there and decide that, you're now going to charge 10x for a press release because that's how you're going to protect your bottom line. That is not the way to go. So use it to your advantage. Don't be afraid of it. And please be thoughtful about changes to your business model. Don't just do it because you paid attention to some story about ChatGPT and decided it was the end of your world as you knew it. And so you need something entirely different.
No, it's not. It's not. You're right. Lots of changes have come that have made us more efficient and has not been the end of our worlds.
Not at all. But if you want to trigger me, feel free to write about value pricing and AI.
I kind of feel like I should do something on Spin Sucks just to see.
So thank you, Chris, for giving us a very passionate topic for us to talk about. And by all means, go read his argument. He is a thoughtful guy, and there are some points in there that I'm sure you can take away and make your own decision. But my view is just don't do that. So with that will draw to an end this episode of the Agency Leadership Podcast. I'm Chip Griffin.
I'm Jenny Dietrich.
And it depends.